3 out of his 4 decks, I would say, have poor matchups versus Mage, so that makes sense to me. As for this Warrior versus Demon Hunter, though, I think he's looking to get a very aggressive start because the armor doesn't pile up quite high enough to beat the OTK unless you can find exactly Bulwark.
Yes, there are a few X factors in this Warrior list. Of course, he'll be wanting to be fast and furious with this opening on the top there, but I do think you mentioned one, the Bulwark. Even if it's not in the usual case where you've seen, like Control Warriors, right, lock it in late game to try and make that Rattlegore connect a couple more times and be safe. But here, it might just buy him enough time to finish out a game. But also, there is the Mutinous, the Devourer in the deck as well, and we all know about actual like hand disruption against late game Demon Hunter when they are getting increasingly more likely to have that Il'gynoth in hand. But for me, the big question is, like I said, this Warrior has not been impressing me so far, and the fact that it's sort of halfway between aggression and control might be to badajimpom's detriment here, because those control cards, apart from maybe exactly the Bulwark, aren't really going to cut it against OTK Demon Hunter.
It is true, but he's happened to draw just the pirate half of his deck. The curve looks amazing for badajimpom. He can get the quest rolling really quickly here, get an early Rakara, and that's where Demon Hunter really starts to struggle, right? If you can have those persistent weapons, minions regenerating on the board, like Demon Hunter has AoE, but for individual minions coming back for free every single turn, it starts to pile up real quickly. So for Dizdemon, he doesn't know it yet, but a Glide for Outcast would be his best friend against this hand from badajimpom. And if we are to return to that topic of Mutinous and its interaction with OTK Demon Hunter, the last time that was really meta, I think, was back before the quest, was even in Demon Hunter, and they were running 2 philosophies.
Yep.
Sometimes even had the Ooze in there to play around Control Warriors with Bulwark of Azzinoth. So in short, there's way more minions that you can accumulate in hand to play around Mutinous. Now there's tradable minions that can do that job, but they won't generally be in your hand, right? You want to throw them back in the deck. So I wonder how careful Dizdemon will be about that around turn 7.
And if you're not used to seeing this Warrior, keep an eye on badajimpom's hand, and I'll tell you how to analyze it like a pro. If there's any removal card, such as Brawl, such as Coerce, arguably Heavy Plate to an extent, anything like that, bad. Any minions that he can play, good. There you go. You're a professional Hearthstone analyst for at least this Warrior deck in this matchup. So Rancor, especially another card that badajimpom will be looking to avoid. That's an early Bulwark of Azzinoth there for him, but most importantly, he's built up a pretty impressive board considering it's only turn 4, and Dizdemon has to decide whether he can afford to just take some time off here and just keep going for the quest, or whether he has to respect the board state on any given turn.
I think the pressure by itself is not that scary yet for Dizdemon. Not that he really has that many options to clear the board. No Immolation, no Fell Scream, but the Cargo Guard armor does stack up. I did mention that it's hard for this version of Warrior to really get enough armor to be out of range of most Il'gynoth combos, but like the most common combo, I suppose, is the 36 you would expect from a Moarg and, 2 Moargs and an Arcanist or something. If you throw a Guild Trader on top of that, it starts to get a little bit wonky, but if you're above 36, generally, it's going to be a lot tougher for Demon Hunter to get it together. So Dizdemon here, the question is to just progress the quest or take the time while this I-Beam freshly drawn is still in Outcast position to start removing some threats. He could just go for it with a Hero Power. Oh, I hate it. I think I would just go for quest progression here.
Whoa. That'd be Moarg?
Moarg I-Beam then?
Okay. I can understand this because he might also be thinking, okay, I saw a fairly aggressive pirate-heavy opening. Am I expecting even more minions here? And can this Moarg compete on board? Which technically right now, it does, right? He's just killed 2 minions. He has a 2-4 versus a 2-2 on board. So I think this is a reasonable play. And the fact that he has Spectral Sight and double Acrobatics means that if he gets safely to the later portions of the game, he has all of the card draw he could realistically need.
It's true. The play also just gets that Spectral Sight out into outcast position. But funny how that works. The quest completion both hit the Moarg, and so the Anchorman for badajimpom couldn't immediately get its Frenzy value, and it might not for quite some time. But the 6 health on that certainly is also a pain for Dizdemon. It's not as though badajimpom needs the draw right now. He has, at worst, cutting class to keep him cycling through. Double studies for Dizdemon here can actually complete the quest with the Acrobatics Aura. Is that better than just going Spectral Sight? Yeah.
So much cards.
Whoa! It's all the Spectrals in the world! Okay, but he's kind of put the brakes on the card draw. I like this. Take the Chaos Leech. He did already use 2 I-Beams, so that's a lot of his lifesteal cut into. So with this last studies, no other Discover effects available in the deck. He has a hand stacked full of card draw, so Chaos Leech is there more for insurance. badajimpom, I guess he could just play more Pirates. Like the 5 mana cutting class feels extremely slow here, but it also just feels too early to commit the Bulwark as well.
Yeah, it's tough, right? He could just get everything else out of the hand. But yeah, it's nothing feeling too great. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what the quest is up to. Is it 2 Pirates away from the next proc right now?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there's Mutinous, and we can see Mutinous would be extremely good next turn.
I also wanted to highlight the Shiver Their Timbers because it feels a bit extreme, but if he wanted to, he could have used that to proc the Frenzy on his Anchorman. Not that bad of a position just yet, though. Again, it's expensive for Dizdemon to deal 6 all at once, so this Frenzy will go off at some point. And right now, Mutinous has only 1 target, and Dizdemon, you know, if he's trying to play around Mutinous, it's tough because, like, he's also going to get Kurtrus in hand most likely this turn, and that's not a good target for that to eat either.
Yeah, and this is very odd because I wouldn't, like, on surface level, I wouldn't even be overly upset at taking this turn to maybe Chaos Leech Immolation Aura with this hand, right? Just try and clear up the board and then do the big draw turn with Kurtrus next turn potentially. But even if he does that, right, there's still only going to be 1 minion in hand, at least as far as we can see now. And look at what is left over there. So many minions to draw.
But a lot of them are combo pieces. Like, ideally, a Peddler could eat up the Mutinous Battlecry, but it looks like... Oh, he gets Glide, but it's not in Outcast because there's a Spectral played. Okay, so he's just trying to get the Kurt in hand. Just manages to play it as well. 2 other minions capable of blocking the Il'gynoth from being eaten. It is a 1 in 3 right now to pretty much just win the game for badajimpom if he deems it fit. Can't have a read, honestly, this early.
Yeah, it's a tough call as well because if he does play Mutinous, he doesn't get to kill Kurtrus, and at the moment, he could spend, what, 2 or 3 mana to be able to just remove Kurtrus without any real effort whatsoever. So that's going to be a tough one. He could go for example, like the easy removal first and then drop the Bulwark of Azinoth behind that, because although it still feels early in the game, Dizdemon only has 9 cards left and Kurtrus is active. So there are going to be a lot of cheap cards coming soon, especially if there's a Glide.
Yeah, the pre-committal of the Bulwark is not so much saying that I think you're going to OTK me right now, but in the near future, I will have to spend my mana probably on things like Mutinous, and I can't, for example, play Mutinous and Bulwark together until turn 9. So for badajimpom to go for that, I think is super reasonable. He can fit in like the Freebooters and the Shiver Their Timbers as well to clear, but he's going Coerce instead, sure.
Yep, still gets to drop a freebooter and push some extra damage. And the way he sees it, he's being very, very aggressive now. But with the 8 cards, 8 cards left in the deck now, he has to expect some kind of AoE to be realistically available for Dizdemon. But I think Dizdemon pulled off a very good turn last turn. That was a lot of pressure to be able to get everything done and not be strictly susceptible to Mutinous. And he pulled it off pretty well.
But he does have a big problem here once again, which is if you are going to do the board clear, the full board clear, it means committing Immolation and another minion, which is once again narrowing your hand down to Mutinous as one of the fewer minions. And he also wants to weave in Hero Power's face every single turn because of this Bulwark. So that's why I don't think Immolation Chaos Leech is necessarily good enough here.
Yeah, Immolation Chaos Leech would leave the most minions in hand though, right? If he's even overly thinking about Mutinous. But it's difficult because if Dizdemon's going to try and like play around Mutinous for the game until Bulwark's gone and he can do everything else and just win, that feels like quite a long time away right now.
It really does. So Dizdemon here is just going to go for starting to weave in the hero powers, one charge from the Bulwark deleted. But now only 3 minions, and I think badajimpom has led up to either a Mutinous turn or just Rakara, but the Rakara feels bad right now because it's going to override the Bulwark next turn. So it is Mutinous, 1 in 3. Goodbye.
Okay, so this is very, very interesting actually, right? Because naturally you would say, okay, Il'gynoth's gone. That is a nightmare. But Magtheridon is there, right? That is a card that can help you win games you technically shouldn't as OTK Demon Hunter. The big problem, though, is Shivalite Timbers and Freebooter is just enough. Now there's Baron. Yeah. There's also a Brawl. So this is where the removal aspect of this deck can actually secure this game of Hearthstone for badajimpom. Because yes, here's the Magtheridon. Dizdemon's going for like the final last attempt here. But we know it's not going to be enough because there's about 500 ways he can just kill this Magtheridon. And you have to expect at that point the sort of Suicide Squad style leftover minions that OTK Demon Hunter has left will not be enough to get this done.
Yep, Dizdemon knows it. Ever since the Il'gynoth got eaten, he knew his chances at winning dropped by at least 90%, and now he's on just the very small chance that badajimpom doesn't have an immediate answer for Magtheridon, which, by the way, still needs to get through a Bulwark to go face, but all the worst nightmares are coming true for Dizdemon here. badajimpom, this is Dizdemon's very last win condition. All he needs to do is get rid of the minions, and he just wins on fatigue. Both Illidari studies used, so no chance to discover anything, and no additional damage other than hero power and I guess weapons.
Yeah, there we go.
Dizdemon knows it, throws it down. Huge win for badajimpom because, you know, personally, I wasn't sure about just Quest Warrior as an archetype, and in particular, the build that badajimpom had. There's so many one-ofs, Coerce, Heavy Plate, Sword and Board, Captain, Outrider's Axe, Brawl. It's like, for him to hit the perfect pirate curve is definitely a high roll there. But Dizdemon, I think, can still get good matchups with this Demon Hunter at some point.
Yeah, and although this was, you know, Quest, Pirate Warrior, so on, it was really Mutinous Warrior. Yes, there was a lot of pressure piled on from badajimpom here, and it did put him in a good spot. But that was the moment, right? With Il'gynoth still available, I've seen Demon Hunter work miracles, right? The win was still available for him there, even though right at that point he was on low health. But with the snipe on the Il'gynoth, and then of course, as I mentioned earlier, badajimpom having multiple ways he can remove this Magtheridon, he just checkmated him at that point. So that was a very sort of clear-cut game number 1 from badajimpom, and a good start to this series as he now moves over to the Aggro Druid.
And perhaps I need to reevaluate my statement of surely the Demon Hunter will still have a good matchup somewhere, right? Because this matchup, I feel, is not the greatest for Demon Hunter. A lot of these newer versions, though, of Aggro Druid have been cutting the Far Watch Post, which is a particularly problematic card for OTKDH, so that's a plus, I would say. But the Aggro Druid still has its capability of building these persistent boards, or for the good players in particular, building boards that are just annoying enough that the Demon Hunter is forced to use some removal to play around, like composting or Arbor Up. And if they overuse the removal, then the Druid can get there with a couple other boards, or even just like mid-rangey minions, Teacher's Pet sticking around for a couple turns. By no means unwinnable for Demon Hunter, though. Dizdemon at the start of the series did ban the Shaman as well, which I was honestly a little bit surprised about. I'm not super sold on the overall power level of Shaman, but you know, today we've seen Doomhanger do a lot of work, and there is like 0 weapon removal in Dizdemon's lists, so I can understand that.
Yeah, well, looking at this, Dizdemon is going to just take a step away from the OTK Demon Hunter, at least for this game for now. And it is going to be the Garrote Rogue there, still with the Kazaka, so not running the Guild Trader like I'm seeing more and more players run as time goes on. What do you make of this against the Aggro Druid? Is this still a part where Rogue can just get the job done, even though on paper it feels like it shouldn't be able to because of those removals they have available? Or is Aggro Druid able to do something that some other aggro decks can't?
I do think it's Rogue favored. Maybe not by as many miles as I once thought, but Aggro Druid is one of those decks where if there's even like a mid-sized field contact turn, it's really tough for them to come back on board. As long as the Rogue can end, say, with a field contact that's not unchallenged, or that's not challenged on board, literally the only way Druid can deal with that is like Hero Power plus Guardian Og Merchant or Park Panther. And in a lot of worlds, Rogue will be able to get an early board advantage thanks to an Octobot like we can see here. But the Rogue does need to get the killer combo, right? The discounts and the card draw. Doesn't necessarily have to be field contact this early. It can be things like Passage, Shroud, Swindle. But if the Rogue goes all in on tempo, there's a chance they gas out, and that's somewhere that the Druid can maybe pull back.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough one for badajimpom. The opening isn't too bad. He does have stuff to do. We are going to see the Octo just played into the Peasant, so letting badajimpom have that additional draw, give him more options. He could have just daggered it down, but I do think that's a little bit slow, especially with that Swindle pickup, right? That's the card draw, or at least one of the elements of card draw he'll be looking for with this Octobot reduction.
Right, I think the dagger on turn 2 is very tempting because you can say, oh, I don't even have to spend a card to get rid of the Peasant, and you reduce 1 card from badajimpom's draws. But the thing is, if you end the turn with nothing on board, badajimpom can then play something like this Bone Chewer Brawler, which if you play an Octobot into that, it's not necessarily safe to get the Frenzy off because badajimpom is playing buff effects like the Guardian Og Merchant. So it's a disciplined play from Dizdemon, and he gets super rewarded here. This is an amazing hand to discount.
So is this along the lines of like Penflinger the 2-1 Swindle then reduce, or will he want to reduce first and then do something with that turn going forward? The choice of the better turn now or the better turn later, I suppose.
I really like the first line you suggest because you actually end up discounting more cards, assuming the Swindle doesn't get a 0 cost spell, because the Penflinger will return to your hand, right? And the Swindle becomes 2 cards. And even though you are buffing the Bone Chewer Brawler, you kind of just expect that with a 2-mana field contact and a 0-mana Penflinger, also 2 more discounted cards, you're going to be able to recoup that lost tempo very easily.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this looks okay to me, yeah. I do think the damage won't be the end of the world, and there's a prize plunder as well.
I don't mind dropping that just now, actually, because it will kill the Bone Chewer Brawler.
And also just get ahead on board, right? Like, that's just good. 2 minions versus none against Aggro Druid. That's the position you really want to be in.
That's right. The question Dizdemon just had to ask himself is the prize plunder in my hand for 1 more draw with field contact worth more than it being on board right now and protecting the Octobot? And he says, no, it's not worth more, and I completely agree. For badajimpom here, he has Park Panther to at least clear up this board, but man, that feels really slow. And using the coin when he has an Elune hand always feels bad because he's looking to do at least a mini pop-off on turn 4, it looks like.
Right. Does mean you could just pack mule an Adorable Infestation, right? Like, that's definitely not the end of the world as a turn. Obviously, it doesn't really interact with the board so well right now, but it has something to maybe build on next turn.
There's even an argument for hero power because the prize plunder on board as a possible shadow step target is a little bit scary. But I do agree. I think it is pack mule for more tempo here, especially since the 4 health breakpoint is a big difference. It's not dead on board right now. But we can see here for Dizdemon, the fact that he'll be playing neophytes most likely with the field contact turn is enormous. And now he has the shadow step for the prize plunder as well. Won't get to go face, but killing the 3-4 with only 1 battle cry feels really good.
Quiet.
Yeah, honestly, Dizdemon's opening has just naturally progressed into the nuts, hasn't it? Like every card, like going into the getting the Swindle first, into having field contact reduced, into now the Shadow Step for the Plunderer, if he wants it, is absolutely insane. And now Shroud to just keep going with that card draw. Huge.
That's so perfect. Yep, Shroud. Oh, Og Merchant as well to protect his contact. That's gotta be game, right?
It's big, isn't it? Like I said, I think this is one of the most like perfect natural draw based rogue games I've ever seen, right? Of course we've seen rogues draw a million cards, and the nature of drawing your whole deck is you're going to draw the good cards, but this is just the perfect answers off the top. And there's even the backup of Neophyte to lock out any potential coin plays, whether that's Coin Arbor up or Coin Oracle like we were talking about, and we can see in hand. This is just lining up to be what looks to be an unwinnable game for badajimpom here.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Like, the one question I had about the turn with Dizdemon was stepping the Octobot means that he didn't have the guaranteed clear on the 3-4 because he couldn't have then stepped the 2-1. But with the mana remaining, he was just saying, all I need is one more ping effect to draw, because he already had the Og Merchant, and he got it with the Ethereal. So he ends up with a fully clear board and with more cards drawn because of the decision to step the Octobot. It's maximum tempo, and, you know, even if he missed the clear on the 3-4, it was not the end of the world because he just gets so much tempo on board.
Right.
badajimpom forced to go for Park Panther just to get rid of the field contact, but this board has already done the damage, and it's gonna threaten lethal next turn most likely.
And at this point for badajimpom, is there anything that can happen or he can do outside of obviously people just making massive mistakes? Is there anything that the aggro druid can do to fight back here? Is there any kind of draw, any kind of combo turn?
Perhaps the Razormane Battle Guard. He does have Oracle of Elune, right? He doesn't have good responses to immediately clear the board, but perhaps he can build enough tauntage and threats where if he draws the Battle Guard here, because you retain the coin, he can get a 1-cost double Teacher's Pet or Greybow. And in a world where Dizdemon maybe runs out of card draw, sometimes that gets there, but we can see here the Passage is not going to let that happen. He has Kazakus to buff the board or shoot minions. Oh, sorry, that's from...
Yeah,
that's not
drew,
returning to the original.
Yeah, it was Prize Plunderer field contact, right?
But still, more than enough. And that is not a Battle Guard.
Yeah, this is pretty rough. Does get the Annoyatrons, which again is maybe a decent consolation prize here. As just something to buy more time, right? It is something. It probably and almost certainly is not going to be enough, as this is probably lethal. But still, it's a good effort. But this game was just not badajimpom's to win, was it? Dizdemon just put on a showcase of what Rogue is capable of.
Yeah, I think it might not be lethal because the Annoyatrons are blocking board space. Oh, wait. Might still be doable, right? He can step the Ethereal Og Merchant. He can brain freeze his own... never mind.
Or...
It wasn't mana to play both Garods, but like in effect, whether it was the board or the Garods, over 2 turns, like badajimpom had no outs,
right.
so...
Yeah, good win there for Dizdemon, evening it up, and a good place as well after taking the loss to the Warrior, mainly from that Mutinous. It's probably giving him a little bit of a boost, just being able to respond with a pretty convincing game of Hearthstone on his side as well. That looked like there was almost no way that Dizdemon could have lost that one, so everything's evened up now. But again, as we talk about often in Conquest, we look at the importance of which 1 or 2 decks need to get wins, like are going to be the struggles for each player, and I do think I almost never put Garrote Rogue on that list as, oh, they're going to struggle to get a win with this. It's like, nope, it's one of the best decks in the game right now. We are going to be moving on, of course, to this Paladin from badajimpom, and he does have a little bit of a surprise in this list as well. We've talked most of the weekend about Paladin having very expected damage numbers and output potential, because a lot of it's so much minion based, and then you just add a Battleground Battlemaster to that number most of the time. But badajimpom is not running a Battlemaster, and he's running the Libram of Judgment for some extra damage from hand as well.
Yeah, that is interesting because it is burst damage. Maybe not as much ceiling potential as a Battle Master, of course, but it's not dependent on you sticking minions on board, which a lot of the current decks in the meta can, counter either by playing taunts, removing those minions, freezing them if you're mage. So I like the idea of the weapon. It also kind of plays into the fact that he's running Doomhammer in his Shaman, so it's just a lineup that says the field is not going to have too many Dressrot Vipers, and he's right. Like, to have made it this far, lack of weapon removal is definitely the right call. There's also the animated broomstick in here as well, which I think is quite useful for Paladin in some other board-based matchups, but not necessarily against Dizdemon's lineup. Like, I don't see that doing very much work against Demon Hunter. Against Warlock, though, maybe.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about Broom, and I think I said this in the previous match I cast, is it just gives Paladin some agency in any given turn, right? Because a lot of the time we've seen Paladin is like, play a minion, pass, play a minion, hope it lives so I can attack next turn, whereas the Broom just allows you to just make some positive trades, maybe utilize some of the Divine Shield minions, or just get some buffs down and use them straight away, especially with the old sort of Libram chain you can do with the Broomstick as well. So excited to see that included. It's definitely one of the Paladin or Libram Paladin lists that I like the look of a bit more. I think there are some tech choices that I don't agree with, but I can always get behind the Broomstick inclusion. But there we had a quick glance at Dizdemon's Warlock, and honestly, just looking at it in general, the only real thing to talk about is the 1 Altar of Fire, 1 Unstable Shadow Blast, because to me, it's either that or 2 altars that we see as the most or biggest change in the list.
Right, instead of the second altar, Dizdemon has the second Mortal Coil, which for the Paladin matchup in particular, I think is a plus. Low-key, one of the best cards for Paladin in this matchup, in my opinion, is Noble Mount, allowing you to put Divine Shield on a minion, which also spawns another Divine Shield minion, which is very, very difficult for Warlock to remove. And the struggle point for Warlock is when the Paladin has repeated buff cards, right? So the Mortal Coil additional one for Dizdemon could be useful, if anything, just to ping off a shield. Right now, though, badajimpom has like half of the good early curve. Like, you're always happy to see the attendant, but wow, Noble Mount to follow up is pretty good. Just have that minion stick around. Eventually, you can draw into Wisdoms or like Hand of Adal because you have Knight of Anointment, and continue to be very annoying with the damage. But for Dizdemon, the early backfire is looking great as well.
Yeah, this is the constant state of worry I'm in when I'm watching someone play Paladin. It's with an opening like this, you're like, okay, 1 drop, great, attendance there, perfect. And then straight away you're like, oh, they need to draw something good next turn. And then the next turn, you're like, oh, they need to draw something good that turn as well. And suddenly you feel so reliant on those draws off the top unless your opening is godlike. So it is just that question again, although of course Knight of Anointment on 3 isn't so bad because you can get that Hand of Adal to fill out the curve.
And even if he misses on Adal, the Libram of Wisdom is great as well. Just keeps the damage flowing. I'm not sure if he would put the Wisdom on the Knight or on the Divine Shield. I'm inclined to say Divine Shield just to keep pressure. But protecting against Mortal Coil is something to note as well.
Okay, so we did get the Libram of Hope, and yeah, I agree. This is not a straightforward choice, especially because
hero power, maybe.
Yeah, true. I think just giving more good targets to Warlock generally can feel a little bit bad sometimes. So I do like the choice in the end. Just try and make 1 good minion. Yes, this 1/1 is susceptible to, like, for example, a tap Mortal Coil turn. But if that's the turn, I think badajimpom's probably okay with it. He just now needs to really get to that turn 5, especially with that Libram of Hope pickup. He'll be able to play Truthseeker into Libram of Hope. So that's one of the ways he can really get ahead now. And he's formulated a plan. If he can, shock horror, draw something to play next turn. I'm sensing a theme.
Picks up Tour Guide, which is pretty good here because, I mean, he would have overdrawn if not, had he not played Coin and a 1-drop, and I think he was looking at Touch as decent enough here to get rid of the 1/1, but Tour Guide is better to keep the quest rolling, get and save the Touch for a better target. But man, that is something to play, and I think that Cariel should hit the board with the Divine Shield protected. I'd like to see the Knight traded into the Tour Guide, and then just push face with the 3/5. Even though 3/5 is poor stats into a Gold Channel, the fact that Divine Shield is on it means that Dizdemon needs a touch, needs a coil to go alongside that, and asking the Warlock for 2-card combinations is always a headache for them.
And I'll tell you something here, I am not surprised now that Badajimpom's made it this far with Paladin, because he just draws what he needs. That is insane. Oh, it's turn 4 and I've not got a card? Okay, carry on, come on. You're up. And now he can go straight into Truthseeker, straight into Libram. Obviously, I'm not trying to say it's all about the draws. Badajimpom is doing the good turns, as you mentioned, throwing away the 1-1, having a Divine Shield filled board is a great start to just keep the pressure on. Dizdemon already down now to 13 health. Obviously going to heal a bit now with that quest. But still, he's got a very slow hand. 2 of the Baron Scavengers, which are not active for a while yet, honestly. And a Giant that's still costing 5 for now. So that's a little bit of a ways off as well. So he might have to just like play, I don't know, Cult Neophyte just to have a minion on board.
I kind of like touch Drain Soul, kill the Cariel here.
Okay.
Obviously, it sucks to use the touch without getting any healing from it, especially when you have a Giant and you're not copying it with Tamsin or anything, but it's the pressure's starting to get scary. Not that Badajimpom runs Battlemaster or would have access to it next turn, but if you are going to spend the next turn if you're not spending this turn clearing, what's the clear next turn, right? You only have 5 mana, you can only play 1 touch with the Soul Rend, and the Divine Shield will continue to be a problem. And sort of the legacy of that play is now he is able to Soul Rend touch this board. And I do think it's that order. I would value the health rather than the card depletion, because he has Backfire to get down to the Baron Scavenger breakpoint next turn.
Would you, at this kind of health total, knowing there isn't any kind of Wind Fury available, would you ever look at some kind of Giant play instead this turn?
Possibly. The Raised Dead has just Tour Guide in it. Am I mistaken there? Just trying to find a clean way for the Giant to hit the board and still get enough value, but not seeing it. Like, I see your point though, because if you take this turn to just reset the board, if there is Libram of Hope on curve, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right.
But outside of that, Badajimpom's curve plays don't seem especially good to me. Oh, sorry, there's 2 Tour Guides, my bad.
Looks like he might well be going for that Giant now, right? If he's going to get the free tap and go for this. Looks like he's damaged himself enough. There is, what, currently 7 damage on board, so 7 left for Badajimpom to make up this turn, which is pretty much impossible, I think.
And the Neophyte is so clutch as well. It means that the Libram of Hope cannot be played this turn. Wisdom's still playable because it's essentially been discounted to -1 with the Truthseeker and Attendant. City Tax traded in, gets McGurgle. I'm just trying to see a way if the Giant can be killed without using the Aldar Truthseeker. And you can if you commit Broomstick as well.
Yeah, you can chain the Librams, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is why I like Broom. It's so good.
Oh, he doesn't even have to commit the Broom itself because this Attendant has a Wisdom on it already, right? So we could go double Wisdom on the McGurgle. And then just send 1/1s into other minions.
Yeah, I was also wondering whether he wants to just trade everything and keep as many Divine Shields as he possibly can this turn. And maybe that's the plan. Like, maybe is there any argument for actually just letting the Giant? I guess not now, because he's going to make the trade. I wonder if there's any reason to let the Giant just have the trade into the Truthseeker and then keep the 2 Divine Shield minions on board. But looks like he is going to just get rid of that Giant, remove it from existence for now. He has just seen a Raised Dead as well, so that's 1 less Raised Dead and a Giant to worry about.
I mean, you brought up a pretty clever point, because leaving Giant at 4 means that, say, if there's a Battlemaster for Dizdemon, it can't, like, VT the 4/6 and then go somewhere else again.
Anything either,
True.
Right?
That could have been some potential, but I think Badajimpom went for the just bread and butter play, but executed perfectly. I mean, he found yet another trade with the 2/2 by having that recruit also going into Neophyte, getting the maximum value from the Librams of Wisdom. But now for Dizdemon, this certainly looks like a better Soul Rend than the one I was recommending, so good on him for that. He can fit in a Tour Guide as well.
Can he? I'm trying to work out if he can if Backfire's better here. There's any way you can like mess with it to get like both scavengers down? Because Backfire would get him there, right? And although it doesn't really immediately help clear up the board, it puts 2 6/6 taunts in the way. That is a lot of defense against Paladin.
It is. Goes Tamsin instead, which I also quite like because he gets to get rid of all the immediate threats, and he's not quite challenging the 1/1 because regenerating the Librams in hand will let that take a VT over Tamsin, but it still preserves the Soul Rend if need be later. And honestly, it's kind of like Soul Rend might be a detriment because I think Dizdemon wants to see all the cards in his deck enter his hand. You want value versus Paladin, which is not a particularly fast deck, but has a lot of value in the late game themselves.
I think a lot of people do disrespect how late Paladin can actually go, right? It's like, it's pretty brutal. They can just make so many minions, and even the small minions they can make big with enough Librams, but here comes the draw, and that's 2 scavengers. He did get the Bristleback, also has a null. Obviously, you can't do all of those things in one turn, but it's a lot of active cards for the next turn or so.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out if there's a clean way to kill the 8/8. I'm not seeing it with only 4 mana remaining.
Could he just like scavenger, coil maybe, and put one of the coils into the Divine Shield? Looks about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I do like that because you can't kill the 8/8 nicely. At least you put enough tauntage in the way that it's unlikely it can go face. We can see there's a Libram of Justice, so it could go face. But the alternative is taking even more damage if you don't put the taunts in the way, right? Maybe he coils first on the 1/1, sees if there's any other thing he can get. If you start Null, can you kill?
Alright, I guess the other option as well, I mean, this is even another option, but he could have, for example, just gone for Bristleback on the 3/3 and then played a taunt and hoped that would be enough because he'd have a load more health. But again, I think peeling that Divine Shield was the most important. I'm not sure about him using the null to do that because he just had coil.
True. I think the reasoning for Dizdemon there might be because if you go for the double scavenger turn, you will have so few cards in hand that the null gets super expensive next turn. But I still kind of preferred the coils because you could also remove the other 1/1. And with the City Tax top deck for badajimpom, he gets to push so much damage now. However, Soul Rend Bristleback should make quick work of this.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be coil first, then Soul Rend Bristleback if he's feeling like he needs to go for it, because then he only loses 2 cards and not 3.
Yeah, I like that. It fills out mana perfectly.
Although you're completely right about the null being more expensive, my question would be, what is he planning to draw that's going to cost him tons of mana this turn that isn't better than having a minion in hand versus a coil? Kind of a strange one.
Reaching for Soul Rend first. Yeah, one we can look back on for sure, but if it's Soul Rend this turn, it looks like he's going Bristleback Tour Guide. So he's switched to turboing down the deck, so I think Dizdemon now is sort of pivoting to the Blightborn Tamsin game plan, which is maybe what he saved the Mortal Coils for. Those could equal fatigue if badajimpom ever presses his hero power, right? Maybe later on, Dizdemon is looking to get a bit more fatigue damage going where badajimpom doesn't necessarily expect it. Samuro as a draw here, very slow, but at least it allows him to get rid of the Bristleback without triggering the lifesteal, and he's all in on the aggro game plan here.
Yep, games suddenly become very simple, and I think badajimpom is fully aware of what Dizdemon is after now at this point, right? After seeing that Soul Rend. So let's see how this one goes. A huge discrepancy in the deck size here for both players, 17-4, 3 on the draw. And this Altar of Fire as well. Most importantly, I think at this point or stage of the game for the Paladin is no Liadrin drawn yet, which at this point really is just the key card. I guess Liadrin or potentially the Varian as well could help him out a lot.
Very considered from badajimpom. They're not going for the hero power, not wanting to give Mortal Coil targets. You love to see that. He's very conscious of those possibilities. This is interesting because if Dizdemon wants to speed up his Tamsin, he could deliberately delete more cards in his deck before he goes for the Mortal Coil. That would not actually speed it up by that much, right? Because he would take 1 fatigue and then 2 fatigue from the natural drop, putting him to 7 out of 8, which is actually very inefficient. Because if you had to tap to get the 3rd fatigue, you're over completing by a lot. So I think it just ends up being like Bristleback Coil Neophyte here.
Yeah, and also bear in mind he has a Flesh Giant left in the deck, right? So he wouldn't want to... I think he wants the cards he's got left at this point. So I really like the coil being used here.
Yeah, love it. Altar of Fire just... I mean, not going to speed up Fatigue, but maybe can delete some important cards for badajimpom later. And there you have it. It's the Giant you talked about. That's the one he wanted to get.
And this just looked like it just slipped away.
I think so. Individual top decks for badajimpom aren't even that great here. Like, even if he gets Barov, he doesn't have a way of proccing it. Dizdemon just burns away his last card though, so he'll take the 1 fatigue, and then he can finish quest by just tapping and then playing Blightborn Tamsin. But that's a Liadrin. I don't think the Hope is immediately playable here, but at least he can get Liadrin.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other play really, is there? I don't think the only other play here is Hero Power Libram, which I don't think cuts it. I guess the only question is quickly working out how many Librams have been played, because if there was ever a chance that the Hope could be not pulled out, it might have been worth to like Hero Power Libram, then play Liadrin just for the extra chance at getting the Libram of Hope, because only 1 has been played, I think, so far.
That is true, and that's why he didn't go for the hero power first. Too many wisdoms played in the meantime, but I think Dizdemon should have this, right? If he just taps next turn, he gets Tamsin, and then he can push... Oh, I guess it's not enough even with the unstable Shadow Blast. Because he has mana to go tap, Tamsin, Blast, and Mortal Coil, but he only has 14 on board. So with the Blast and Mortal Coil, essentially he has to get 7 damage going through, which not sure that's possible. But he can just kill the Liadrin.
Yeah, that might be the way, right, if he can't do it. I was just trying to work out if he could do something really weird, like if he could ever get some kind of Shadow Blast his own minion and make it coilable, but I don't think that's possible. So he's just going to be able to kill off the Liadrin, and that should buy Dizdemon enough time. We can see the Libram of Hope, but I think that Fatigue is going to stack up very quickly.
But then again, Dizdemon's nearly out of healing himself. It's really just this 3-3. I need to do the math. Okay, Dizdemon took 3 fatigue just now, right? So next turn, how much he's dealing to badajimpom is 4 + 5 + 2, which is 11. And not quite lethal yet.
Wait, it's... Oh, it's so close. Because I was just working out how many Librams he had, because of course the horse lives, right?
Yeah.
That was just, I was just working out if it was just lethal. Without the Bristleback, I think it was just lethal right there. With the weapon and the 8 Librams on the horse.
Yeah, I think so. Bristleback coming in clutch. But I kind of think badajimpom still has this, right? Because how does Dizdemon kill all of these things now? There's going to be a Devout Pupil at the end of this. And again, his reach is only 11 next turn. So yeah, I think what badajimpom needs to do now is create breakpoints where Dizdemon cannot kill the 8-8, which is very simple. Yeah, he just gets rid of the 3-3, and he should know the last card is Goldshire Knoll, which also is not playable alongside a tap. So Jimpom has this on lock. I did not see this coming.
Yeah, and I think this is just the really big drawback here of just not having any additional quick card draw at the end for the Tamsin. For Dizdemon, I think a lot of us are used to seeing for example, a backfire still being left over, maybe, you know, to help with that just extra burst of fatigue right at the end of a game, if Tamsin is your plan. But I guess that Dizdemon might have suffered just a little bit for having to switch to the Tamsin plan, right? He didn't obviously plan that this game was going to be a Tamsin game, but he did make that switch, and maybe that's just what burnt him in the end. He just didn't have quite enough. But it was very close, a very strange game to see there, the way it played out. But as we mentioned much earlier on, Paladin has a deceptively good late game, especially with that Liadrin just popping up exactly when she was needed.
True. The Libram of Justice a little bit earlier on was also quite clutch, just to put Dizdemon on an awkward health total where he couldn't necessarily go for the Blightborn Tamsin as early as he would have wanted, which could have made all the difference. Overall, I think very nicely navigated by both players. Jimpom in particular also just consciously trading away certain minions rather than shields where he could to protect his shields, forced Dizdemon to use his removal a bit more inefficiently, and also skipping hero power towards the end there to deny a Mortal Coil target. Just little things like that stack up because both these decks tend to hit the bottom or see the majority of their decks in this matchup. And it means now that badajimpom only needs to get a win with his aggro druid, and he's through to the finals.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, right? Like, this was probably not the way he imagined this tournament going. I think a lot of this for him was he just gets to play in a cool tournament and compete and just see how he can do. But suddenly, with every win, especially past top 8, you're thinking, hang on a minute, am I just going to win this whole thing? So he must be very nervous, also very excited. But the true trick here for him will just be to keep his cool. He can go nuts after the game. He can go crazy after this weekend's over. But for now, he needs to keep a level head and keep playing solid Hearthstone, because Dizdemon, although he's on the back foot, Dizdemon's not some, doesn't mess about, right? He's been doing this for a long time. He's been doing well for a long time. So he's not going to be thrown off too much by being just 2-1 down in a series.
And even though it looked tempting to say Magtheridon's AoE, that's good versus Druid, it takes so long to get that online, and the Druid can augment the tokens they get with Guardian Aug Merchant, with buff effects like Adorable Infestation, and the eventual Arbor up, so it's not guaranteed that you can go Magtheridon into an immediate wake up. I like that Dizdemon tossed it. But for Jimpom, I also like the mulligan, keeping one squirrel and looking for something a bit more impactful, right? Because even if you do hit the early curve versus Demon Hunter, you have to expect that they're going to get Immolation Aura at some point. So you want to have Composting, Oracle of Elune, that type of thing for a big refill later on. He is going to start off, though, with the Razor Main Pack Mule immediate combo for maximum pressure. We've seen other players deliberately hold on to Razor Main when they have Oracle of Elune, but without any guaranteed card draw, I think badajimpom was going to play Elune on curve at some point anyway if he held on to it. Like, the mana just doesn't work out cleanly if you hold the Elune for that long.
Yeah, one thing that does fascinate me about this type of druid is all the openings and how different players just approach playing the deck, right? Because at surface level, there'd be nothing wrong with playing like Squirrel, then maybe even Coin Oracle of Elune, and then go in that way. There'd also be nothing wrong with just playing a normal, like a natural curve, and having Coin for like a really powerful turn 5 play, or turn 4 play potentially. But yeah, badajimpom's gone for the most aggro opening. He does have Teacher's Pet ready for next turn, and I am wondering now if the client will just trip over a little bit if he plays the wrong mule.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He will. You could say this is the right mule too if he waits for us, but no, he's not waiting. All right.
To be fair, if badajimpom's a little bit newer to tournament play, maybe he's not got quite drilled into him like we have our grandmasters of like, you play that other mule first, please. So we will get the spectator sorted as quickly as possible. Of course, we'll get it switched over. I'm sure things. There we go. Perfect
Great.
timing. So 3 mules on board along with that battle guard, and now it's all on Dizdemon to respond. Does have I-Beam, but again, gets to kill off that big threat. But other than that I-Beam, not really got too much to do right now.
Yeah. I mean, he had guaranteed quest completion with acrobatics, but I completely agree. I-Beam was better there. You don't want to let badajimpom go for an early Grey Bow or Teacher's Pet. And with the double jump, he had reasonable odds to pick up Spectral Sight to complete the quest that way. But unfortunately, he had the glide here, so quest is on hold for now. He can do it with glide next turn, but it's extremely slow. And badajimpom, if he wants, could just play a Loon on curve to try to get the squirrels back to back. But yeah, maybe that's a bit of a overcommittal.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate the Squirrel Hero power either, and I guess Dizdemon has to look at the silver lining of his opponent's turn now and say, well, at least he didn't play a 1-drop and composting, right? Because I think that would have probably been the best turn badajimpom could have had with that board, right? 4 minions in there threatening with 4 card draws in the death rattles. That probably would have been too much for Dizdemon to deal with, but he's going to start with a glide now. Just get that quest progression done and just search for better answers to what's in front of him, because right now he didn't have them before the glide, and honestly doesn't look like he has them after the glide, unless you argue that it's going to be a double Moarg I-Beam kind of game.
Maybe not I-Beam, but the Moargs certainly have potential if he picks up an Immo at some point or a Fellscream Blast. Against Druid, if you manage to clear the board and end with Moargs, they don't actually have any ways to punish you for leaving a Moarg on board, so it's one of the most powerful swings you can get. But it's certainly still lacking a piece of the puzzle, and right now Dizdemon needs it just to stay alive, let alone win the board.
Yeah, it's been a very tame game from Dizdemon's side here on the Demon Hunter. No AoE available, no big play options. Next draw is Spectral Sight. He can still get AoE to help him out here with those 1-mana Moargs.
The skull! Biting him in the back here, the skull he discovered from the Spectral Sight. But, sorry, the Illidari studies. But this Spectral can still pull Immolation Aura, but then the discounts are not enough to let you play Immo with Moarg. So if it gets Fellscream Blast, then you can only really play 1 Moarg still. Oh, this is a disaster. Maybe it is a double Moarg
I told you.
As desperation.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing to say, oh, does this play lose me the game in the long run? Just don't lose right now. I know that might not be correct, but just survive another turn, especially when 1 Immolation Aura could help you out a lot, because unless after, say, double Moarg I-Beam is played, unless badajimpom has lethal that turn, you have to imagine he respects the Moargs enough to trade.
There's actually the possibility to Peddler instead of Spectral to get the Immo, but again, if you miss on Immo, you're just dead. So he is going for the safer play here. Moargs, decent at challenging the board, but we can see here for badajimpom, wow, the Wriggling Horror is probably not better than Teacher's Pet, but could be clutch next turn.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
It makes the if you can get 2/3 attack minions, he puts the 2 1/1s in, right? And then Wrigglings with the Oracle of a Loon.
Actually, I do like that better. You're right. Yeah. Because if you play Teacher's Pet, you're still high priority clearing the Moargs, I think, which involves trading your entire board. So what that would leave you with is just 2 2/1 pack mules, and the Teacher's Pet doesn't sound particularly great. So it looks like he's going to trade the squirrel and then go for the Elune Wriggling, which means that in smack dab in the middle. So 1 Marsul Cub would be able to finish off the left Moarg, I guess, if he trades the squirrel into that one first. And then the buffed pack mule plus the Marsul Cub on the other side could clear the other Moarg. Then he could push the other pack mule face.
Yeah. I don't really think like a Teacher's Pet is really going to win him the game at this point. I think it's much more about just keeping the board wide, because he knows for a fact that Dizdemon has no AoE available to him, because 2 Moargs, if you had AoE in hand, would not have been played like they were last turn.
Okay, so he went about the trade slightly differently, has more minions on board this way, but less health on one of the pack mules. And, you know, if you have a strong read on no Immo, which he did, then this is just better.
Oh, no Fellscream Blast either.
One last chance, misses.
So rough.
There's just no more way to draw and play cards, right? Like the discounts.
Nope.
But he's not dead on board. He's at 22. He just prays there's no Arbor up and goes again next turn.
Yeah, and I guess he goes Tusk Piercer, kill off that mule, right? Like, is there any real reason not to? I guess he could use the mana now to acrobatics, just draw more cards while he has the mana. That's one reason.
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of. You can't really say like, oh, Arbor Up has less board space if I don't clear it. Well, yeah, if there's Arbor Up, you're dead. So yeah, exactly. So
but at least he had less board space. He didn't get that second tree in.
Yep. 6, 9, 11, 13 currently presented by badajimpom here. So outside of Arbor Up, there's not really a chance for lethal. So yes, Dizdemon did go for the acrobatics, but still misses on any AoE. He will play Skull, or it will be available next turn anyway. That's not an Arbor Up, but Teacher's Pet is sticky and can possibly survive the Death Rattle through the AoE. So I'd like to see that played.
Yeah, he misses a hero power and getting the Bone Chewers down, but I do agree. I think the Death Rattle at this point in the game is probably more valuable than the hero power extra push.
Agreed. Like, again, up till this point, he's had the read on no MO, but just now Dizdemon drew through 2 more cards, which he couldn't play with no more mana, and those cards could be MO, and he has the whole next turn to find it. So I like the board insurance of playing Teacher's Pet.
And that's the scary thing, isn't it, right? Like, badajimpom is obviously happy there's been basically no AoE this game, but the longer that goes on, the less likely it is that Dizdemon will continue to not have AoE.
Root.
Oh, no.
And there it is. However, the Death Rattle, intact. Also, if there is just, say, Arcanist MO here, what's the rest of the turn? Probably start studies. Yeah.
Going for any kind of lifesteal there. Probably has to settle with some kind of draw instead.
Spectral seems good.
Yeah, as long as he has 3 mana at any given point this turn, he's doing okay.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're at a point where you skull.
Probably not, unless you're feeling very adventurous. I do like this, though, because this just happens, right? Because this clears the whole board, and the stealth.
The moccasin shows its ugly head again.
Yeah. Or doesn't, technically, because I can't see it.
I can see only the ugly head here. And that is purchase in hand as soon as he trades one of these back. We could call this missed hero power, but I guess you could trade both the minions. It's probably more important to have more options in hand right now as opposed to waiting for Kurtrus to get more discounted cards. I don't think he has time necessarily to play Kurtrus next turn, even though he's technically alive to an Arbor Up here.
Okay, so Teacher's Pet and one of the Bone Chewer Brawlers being played here. Order does not matter before anyone mentions anything. Yet you can't poison the face, so you're fine.
He could, however, have left the stealth intact and left the stealth in the middle, like you place the minions on either side of it. Right? Because the poison is the keyword that's conditional on there being no other minions on board. The stealth is natural, and that may be played a bit better around Fellscream Blast, but I'm getting a bit nitpicky here. Like the 2 damage going face could also be relevant in terms of Arbor Up breakpoints if this demon clears something else. And right now, though, he has access to the Magtheridon clear with the Guild Trader and Fellscream Blast.
I think that's a big deal, isn't it, right? Like, because he's pushing him down to 7 and there isn't an Arbor Up right now, I think like a hero power could be important in deciding the game at that point, right? So I do like the overall pushing of damage, but that's Magtheridon.
Well, another stealth could be big here. It's Mukla, which is above average, but not quite enough for badajimpom to pull this back. Oh, but there's the Arbor Up off the top. Oh my gosh. Dizdemon's in trouble again, and he's used so much AoE by this point.
It's about as good a response as badajimpom could have wanted at that point, right? Not only a huge minion from the Teacher's Pet, but the Arbor Up to follow it up with, and also a taunt. So Magtheridon is hitting one of the lower attack minions that's on the board.
Again, sorry, we can't look at the deck tracker because Packmule had to make us restart, but I think there's still an MO in the deck. And you would still need spell damage to go with it to do anything relevant here. So looks like Skull rather than going Kurtrus double jump. I think that's better on average to go Skull because you want the 3 draw immediately. Kirch's double jump does spend 6 mana, which is the same as Skull, but you can argue Kirch's discounts more overall, but Dizdemon doesn't have that much mana to work with, is the thing. Goes Acro instead.
Ooh.
Oh, that's really rough.
And with no Kurtrus down, it's not like he can glide for the absolute dream, right? Like, there's no chance.
I'll scream. Is there an Arcanist left?
Yes!
Yes, there is! Yes, there is! He's alive! And he gets a full clear if the Mechtherodon trades into the Mukla.
So huge, so much health back as well. Now even the Park Panther potential has gone flying out the window for this game. That's going to be a concede just out of nowhere. Last ditch attempt there from Dizdemon. He does even up the series, and this is what I mean. I mentioned this when I've cast Dizdemon before. He is just as cool as a cucumber, honestly. Like, that is intense. That was for his tournament life, and it looked like he was dead about 5 different times in that game, and he's just sat there locking it in. He's like, yeah, okay, need to do this now. Okay, drew this. Yep, no problem. There's the clear. And he's just casual, and it's really impressive that at least visually he manages to keep his cool. I imagine he's feeling, some kind of tension, of course, but still seems to be keeping his head on in here, and it's paying off for him.
This is what I've been saying. He's the Stone Cold killer. The polar opposites are who he's been facing throughout this tournament so far. Super Fake, badajimpom, 2 balls of nervous energy apparently. Right now, badajimpom, even though he's not dancing on screen or off screen the way he did, he has managed to keep his focus, which is very important. Loved what I've been seeing from his play so far, but it's come all the way down to the wire now. Game 5, badajimpom, last chance on the aggro druid, but face off against the deck, which I feel his lineup was built to prey on, the handlock. Can he get there? Who knows? Dizdemon, I'm not even sure if he's one of those players that tosses Quest versus Aggro Druid. I've heard very fiery opinions on either side. I think a lot of APAC players like tossing the Quest versus Aggro Druid, but the Mr. Turney Uffen group, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, does not like to toss the Quest.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that there's still small things that the players are working out when we're so far along in the meta and towards the end of a meta, right, with an expected mini set in the near future. So kind of cool to see that happen, and it is all going to come down to this game. This is for a spot in the finals, right? badajimpom here, a relative newcomer to the scene versus Dizdemon, honestly one of the names that I've seen around regularly for the longest time. So it really is quite the clash here, and it is going to be the Aggro Druid versus Warlock, and this one's a little bit tough as well because Warlock does have access to a ton of spot removal and AoE with that Soul Rend. But what do you think is going to be most important for Dizdemon on the Warlock here? What is he going to be looking for early on? What are the key things?
Well, Soul Rend first on top of the list by a long margin, I would say. And then even just things like Backfire, Tour Guide to keep the card draw rolling, eventually get the Giants down, because whether or not you subscribe to the toss quest mentality, you still have to win the game off of a board swing at some point. I think it's very unlikely you have Blightborn Tamsin as a win condition, but if you say you toss the quest, there is a world where the aggro druid just forces you to delete so many cards by playing Soul Rend that you start to fatigue. You can overcome that situation by on the same turn you Soul Rend, follow up with Giants and Baron Scavengers and just actually kill them. So making sure that he does have the big AoE and also at some point access to a big threat turn is the main priority for Dizdemon here. So kind of like the Backfire keep, although Drain Soul is also pretty important to make sure you can immediately kill like a Razormane Battle Guard, for example.
Right, yeah, because unfortunately for the more slower deck players, you don't get to just play the aggro board once and win the game.
Quest.
And he did get rid of the quest there, so Dizdemon, there you go, that's all the information you need to know, at least in this matchup. He wants to get rid of it, but also badajimpom does have a strong opening, has the 1, 2, 3, 4, doesn't quite have the combination with Battle Guard yet, but there's always next turn, Gia. He can always just draw something to play with Battle Guard.
True. I've never been so excited about a Mortal Coil in my life, though. Even though it looked pretty innocuous there, that just fixed so many of Dizdemon's problems, right? Which is the Squirrel continuously compounding damage because he doesn't want to use Drain Soul on it, and he wants to have as much health as possible to play Backfire safely. Badajimpom, though, choosing to play Squirrel rather than the Razor main Battle Guard, he saw 2 cards were kept. Very likely one of them is Drain Soul, so he's going to hold on to the Battle Guard, it looks like, for as long as possible to play with the Oracle of Elune and try and get a 5-drop down for 1 mana with that. Dizdemon, though, because it's just another Squirrel here, pretty free to just go for the Backfire, start accumulating threats, because like we said, if you toss the quest and play very willy-nilly with your removal, there's a chance you get fatigued. So it's trying to find the giants before you start deleting your deck.
Well, question point here, 2 big choices as far as I can see. It's Battle Guard and Og Merchant, or Oracle of Elune Go. Difficult choices, upsides and downsides to both, honestly, right now.
So scary, both of them. I mean, I'm leaning more towards Battle Guard because I think Divine Shield is very solid protection versus Warlock, especially if you've seen them use a coil already, as Dizdemon did. Granted, he's running 2 copies, but it's tough to get rid of the Battle Guard at that point. And if you play Elune and it somehow lives, yes, there's the chance that you get to copy the Battle Guard, but you don't necessarily have a ton to benefit from it the next turn. So I much prefer this line from Badajimpom.
Yeah, this is where things get a little bit tricky, right? The minions are starting to stack up here on the Druid side. Dizdemon does have removal, but also my biggest question is how risky does he want to be? Because he has some removal, but he also has Tamsin in hand, and if he can just hold off, these are... okay, beat me to it, but I promise I was working there. These are the type of board states where I really like to just drop a Bristleback, because Badajimpom surely cannot ignore this minion, and luckily for him he does have that Park Panther, but this has to be respected, which means Dizdemon gets an extra 3 health this turn, which then just buys him that little bit more time to get to a Tamsin, because if he can just hold off 1 more turn, and maybe he can, especially with Cult Neophyte in hand, he can get Tamsin Drain to go off, which is a huge difference. But can he afford to do that, Gia? Is this already too much damage being represented by the Jimpom?
Looks like it to me. That's dead to Arbor Up if you leave it up. Also, even if there's not Arbor Up, leaving up a Park Panther is leaving up 7 damage for free.
Right.
So Dizdemon does pivot from the Tamsin here. Unfortunate, but there's other removal in his deck that he could pair with that. But that's a Bone Chewer Brawler, which can be multiplied with the Peasant as well, because Badajimpom's gonna create that board space. I was wondering, though, if it was trade Squirrel or trade Og Merchant here, because there's now a lot of Acorns in the deck, but not that much board space if he goes Peasant and Bone Chewer, so he might actually miss out on some Acorns.
That's true, but if he does miss out on them, that means everything's lived on board, which I think he's okay with, and if everything gets removed, he has the potential of a big refill from those squirrels that are in the deck. So I think this is a win-win scenario for Badajimpom, so personally I do like the squirrel trade there.
Oh man, this is so awful for Dizdemon. No Soul Rend, no cheap ways to draw cards, and the only thing in the Raise Dead pool is Neophyte? He is not dead on board. There is 14 and a hero power, but if he goes for going below 14, he's kind of dead. The draw is to look for Drain Soul Mortal Coil. Gets Drain Soul at least. It is so problematic. I mean, the Peasants are gonna draw towards Arbor Up.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because, yeah, Drain Soul, good card. When you're facing down 1 or 2 minions, like against a whole board, doesn't quite cut it. And it's not as if he can even just play a Netheron and Drain Soul and just hope it's enough. It's just not going to be there. Without the Soul Rend, and because this board has kind of ran away with the game, mainly down to that Oracle of Elune along with the 2 drops that happened last turn, this just feels too slow. There's 18 health, so again, without the Arbor Up, it's not strictly just dead, but he also kind of is dead. Composting as well, which is just infinity cards.
It really is.
There wasn't Squirrels and Arbor Up this turn. There's going to be Squirrels and Arbor Up next turn.
Well, badajimpom, thank you for playing the right-hand pack mule so we can see the disaster which is about to befall Dizdemon here. If there's top deck Soul Rend, can we talk? Yes? Oh, but...
Wait, Tamsin, does Tamsin touch?
Not enough.
Oh, Shadow Bolt, yeah, it just doesn't, it's just not enough, right? Unstable Shadow Bolt's going to deal the damage to Dizdemon.
No, Soul Rend. It was the only outcome from this tap that could ever matter. badajimpom has his head in his hands. He looks so stressed, but even if there is a Soul Rend, he's fine. Look at all the cards he draws, and there's not a Soul Rend.
This is the most stressed you will ever be, right? He knows he can make it to the final. It looks, he's almost certainly won, but we saw it from Frenetic as well. Until that portrait has exploded, you will not feel calm. Big win there for badajimpom, and you are looking at one of our finalists for Masters Tour, Stormwind, and I don't even think he can quite believe it right now, as he's had such an amazing run so far. And that series, again, I just want to give it another shout out to Dizdemon. Every time I've seen him play, I've seen him dig himself out of some very awkward scenarios and do it whilst being quite calm and making brave plays. And I think that's just goes to show how strong a player Dizdemon is. So although he's going to be done in this tournament, I just want to congratulate him on yet another good run in a Hearthstone tournament. But again, badajimpom is going to be your player who's heading to the finals from the first semi-final here.
That's right, completely agreed about Dizdemon. It is yet another feather in his cap, making a top 4 in an MT GM point secured. It's another performance he can be very proud of, but right now the spotlight is on the relative newcomer in badajimpom, who is also bringing a lineup which is quite off meta in my opinion. Like, a lot of these decks were on people's radars, but to bring them all together and omit the greats like the Garrote Rogue, the Handlock, the OTK Demon Hunter, not many people have gone for that, and it's worked for him thus far. But can he take it all the way to the finals for a victory versus either MSBC or Fury Hunter? Can't wait to find out, Raven.
Yeah, it's going to be a spicy one, isn't it? Like, no matter what this looks like, no matter who wins in that second semi-final, it's no doubt going to be an explosive final for Masters Tour Stormwind. So what a crazy series overall and a crazy day so far. Obviously, another reminder that is our next semi-final is going to be Fury Hunter versus MSBC. We've got coming right up. We are going to go to a break.